Hello, my name is Paula Anderson, and I'm with Paula Anderson Coaching Consulting. And today we're going to have just a quick little video on leadership as well as setting goals and delegating and time management. So let's get started. Now, I want to start off by giving you the leadership quote for this video. It says, "Leaders become great not because of their power, but because of their ability to empower others." And of course, the author of that quote is John C. Maxwell. And when we think about leadership, we're thinking about, okay, are you actually empowering your team members to do something that is above what they are currently doing? So you want to think about it from that perspective. If you are starting to work in the field, then of course you want to make sure that you have some type of time management. And this can apply to any industry, but I'm focusing specifically on individuals that are actually working in the medical billing and medical coding field. So you want to make sure that you are organized. Keeping a calendar of events, so that would mean that whether you're going to do an electronic calendar or if you're going to do a paper calendar. So that kind of depends on what is your preference. But if you're using a smartphone, then of course your smartphone can be used to set up your appointments, as well as if you want to use a paper calendar. When you schedule appointments, now scheduling appointments is very important in terms of how you're going to actually manage your time. If you're scheduled to be with somebody at 1 p.m., and if that time is not going to work for that other person, then of course you want to at least say, "This time doesn't work for me. Let me give you an alternate time." One of the things that I have noticed is that when you give someone a time frame, they don't respond to the email. Well, how do I know that you received that email if you don't respond to me and say, "Thank you for sending me the email, but this particular time is not going to work for me"? So you want to make sure that you at least respond with some kind of alternative date if that time does not work for you. Balancing daily responsibilities. So, depending on what your workflow is, this could mean that you do certain things in the morning. I recommend that whatever you find to be the most difficult to do, that you kind of focus on that when you have high productivity levels. So, for instance, if you're having to code operative reports, you want to make sure that you do that in the morning because your mind is fresher in the morning as opposed to late in the day. So you want to make sure that you focus on the things that's going to provide you the most energy so that you can be most productive. Now, behind me, I have the word SMART, which is an acronym for a SMART goal, and it stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. And we're going to talk a little about how to set SMART goals. Now, I will give you something that I've done over the last maybe 6 months. So I created a financial management goal in terms of I wanted to monitor my credit score at the end of each month. And then I also wanted to pay down credit card balance. So at the present, I have two credit cards, and I just recently paid one off. Now, what I did on a monthly basis, I paid that credit card off on time. I paid it on time. I did not add anything else to it. And so my measurement is that I'm actually measuring my credit score each month to determine whether or not I am increasing. So over the last 6 months, there has been an increase in my credit score because I made an intentional decision to actually reduce my credit card debt, but also to increase my credit score. So if you have to get a board where you can put everything on there, so you want to say what is the specific goal that you're trying to achieve. So we'll say individuals that are trying to pass the CPC exam. Now, if you have already gone through a formal training program, then it's probably going to be, it won't be as time consuming for you to go back over and kind of do like a refresher course. But if you have not looked at any type of coding information, just say for over the last 2 years, then you know that you need to definitely set some goals. And you need to set some goals as to how often you're going to study for the exam. You also need to set some goals as to what type of materials you need for the exam, and then also you need to determine what is a realistic time frame for you to actually take the exam. Now, one of the things that I have noticed with individuals is that Once they get through with their formal training, then they instantly go and take the exam. Well, you may need to prep a little bit because you may need to go back and refresh over all of those um, sections in the CPT manual as well as in the ICD-10 manual to make sure that you're really comfortable with that material before you take the test. So you need to have some kind of measurement to determine whether or not you are ready to take the exam. Now, sometimes when you are setting goals, of course, what you initially try to do may not work out the very first time. So I'll give you another example. So in 2020, I met with a group of individuals and we were meeting so that I could develop a curriculum for a program that I wanted to launch. Well, we met in March. Well, we actually first met in February. And then in March, we met for a panel discussion, and that was on March the 5th to be exact. Well, on March the 14th, the world shut down. So we could not do what I was planning on doing. So I actually had to put that goal on hold. And I just recently was able to implement that goal at the beginning of 2022. So sometimes you have to delay what you're trying to do because things do happen, but you never give up. Here's another quote that I want us to go over. It says, focus on your goals, not your fear. Focus like a laser beam on your goals. And this is by Roy T. Bennett. Focusing on what you want to achieve is very important. So I mentioned that, I had to put that goal on hold because I couldn't really accomplish what I was trying to do. But what I did do within that time period, I focused on making sure that I got my education completed. So I was still in the process of completing school. So I actually spent that time focusing on making sure that I completed the educational goal that I had set. So in 2020, I completed one goal, and then in 2021, I completed another goal. So I was able to focus on something so that I could actually pivot until I can get back to the original goal that I had set in 2020. Now, when you are setting goals, you want to think about what is the long term goal. Now, if you're trying to get a certification and you are not working in that industry, meaning that you don't have like a job at the moment within that for that certification, then you want to think about what is going to be the best course of action for me to take so that I can achieve that goal faster. So, to give you an example, if you're trying to get the auditing certification, but you've never worked in an environment where it gives you the exposure to auditing, then you may not want to get that certification at that time. You may want to focus on another certification. So make sure that if you are trying to get an additional certification, that you can actually use that certification, I would say within the next year or two. Because getting more certifications and you're not utilizing them is just you're just getting more certifications. So make sure that you can use them. Now, if you are working with a team, then of course, delegating is another aspect. And this all goes into making sure that you're setting goals and that you're able to operate within a department. So, projects is something that you may have within the department. And if you've assigned a project is something that has a life cycle. So it's going to end. It's not something that you're going to do continuously. You're going to have a definitive time that it's going to end. So you want to make sure that if you assign a project, that you monitor that project and you follow it through to completion. Autonomy. If you like to work independently, then you want to make sure that you have the opportunity to work in an environment where you can have little to no supervision. Now, some people have to be monitored, some people have to be micromanaged. But if you are an individual who doesn't require to be micromanaged, then you want to make sure that you have autonomy and you have the flexibility and the creativity to do things. And we talked about time management already, but just making sure that if you have a certain amount of workload, then that you're able to complete that by the deadline. Now, if you're having some problems completing those deadlines, then of course you want to reach out to your manager or supervisor so that you can actually get some assistance. Now, stop. This is another quote. Stop sleeping, get to work. You have much time. You will have much time to sleep when you die. Now, I disagree with this quote because you definitely need to have sleep. Some people try to live off of 3 to 4 hours of sleep, but I recommend that you get at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep. And actually getting enough sleep actually helps you to be sharper. So when you're limited and you're operating off of energy drinks and caffeine and all of that, that's working against your body. So you don't want to do that. Public speaking. So if you get an opportunity to do some public speaking, then that's going to give you some more skills. So if you are a chapter officer, then that's a great opportunity for you to improve your public speaking skills. You want to start off with a small audience, so maybe a team meeting would be one of the audiences that you start off with. Again, if you have to do some education for the physician, that may be another area. And then, of course, if you're a chapter officer, you can speak at chapter meetings. Now, we know that most chapters are having virtual meetings, but that's still an opportunity for you to speak virtual. So it's probably less intimidating when you're speaking from a virtual platform as opposed to in front of a live audience. And writing. So if you're trying to learn how to write, if you need to write denial letters and emails, then of course you want to make sure that you focus on your writing skills and making sure that everything is grammatically correct, and that you use language that is professional. So you don't want to ever use text message language when you are trying to write something that's in a formal setting. Now, email communication is, of course, the primary form of written communication that we use today within the workplace. So you want to make sure that you sharpen your writing skills. And writing a denial letter just means that you're trying to appeal it. You're trying to let the payer know exactly why that why that denial needs to be overturned. So we'll use one final quote and then we'll wrap this up. Communication is a skill that you can learn. It's like riding a bicycle or typing. If you're willing to work at it, you can rapidly improve the quality of every path of your life. Brian Tracy. So we were talking about this quote, communication is a skill that you can learn. It's like riding a bicycle or typing. If you're willing to work at it, you can rapidly improve the quality of every path of your life. Brian Tracy. And so communicating is something that we do on a daily basis. When you're talking to your family, when you're talking to your friends, when you're at work, so you're always communicating, whether you are listening, whether you are writing something. That all is a form of communication. Even if you are on social media, that is a form of digital communication. So we're always communicating. So making sure that you're communicating effectively. And if you're working in the healthcare industry, then of course, the way that you communicate with your coworkers is going to be different than the way that you communicate with physicians. So we know that they are the authority and they have a higher level of standards. So you have to communicate with them on a different level than you will with your coworkers. But you want to make sure that you always use the appropriate communication channel when you're dealing with coworkers as well as when you're dealing with physicians. And then, of course, if you're having to deal with patients, the communication among patients also has to be different than how you would communicate with your coworkers as well as with physicians. So that concludes this little short video. Again, we talked about SMART goals. We talked about time management. We talked about making sure that if you're going to be in a leadership role, that you delegate and that you give tasks, you give projects to your team members. We also talk about your writing skills, making sure that you write well. And of course, writing is something that you're going to practice. We mentioned public speaking, having those opportunities within your local chapters to actually develop your public speaking skills, and then of course communication, making sure that you write well and that you know how to present yourself amongst your coworkers as well as your managers, and then for your physicians. So stay tuned for more videos from Paula Anderson, Coaching and Consulting. Thank you.